How does love grow? I want my love for my wife to continue to grow every day, and I want my wife's love for me to continue to grow every day. And when we meet with a couple that needs help, I want for their love to grow for each other. And usually they're meeting with us because that's not happening. So, well, what's the solution? Well, I like to have some practical values that guide me, and there are basic truths that I can work to apply in specific circumstances, and I'm going to cover 3 of those today. I want to look at how God treats us in order to gain wisdom on how to treat my wife. And one of the most helpful Bible passages that I explain to couples is in Galatians 5. It says, "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. But if you are always biting and devouring one another, watch out, beware of destroying one another." So the 3 concepts that jump out to me in that passage are freedom, responsibility, and consequences. So let me elaborate on this a little bit more. The first one, freedom. Give freedom to your partner. So it says that you have been called to live in freedom, and this is a profound concept. God gave us free will. He gave us the gift of freedom from sin, and He knew that love can't grow unless you're free to choose not to love. See, if He forces us to obey Him, it wouldn't be real love, and God doesn't force us. So, what does that tell you about love and how to treat your partner? Well, love grows when someone is free to choose. When freedom is taken away, love becomes this obligation or a chore, and it doesn't grow. And relationships can be hurt when freedom is taken away. So how do you take away freedom? Well, when there's some kind of a power imbalance, like one person acts as a parent or a teacher, exerting control, making demands, and any kind of manipulation, being judgmental or critical, pressuring or convincing people, or being overly responsible for your partner. So Michelle and I used to think that we had to feel the same way about something at the same time. So if Michelle was upset about something, I felt responsible to either fix the problem or to cheer her up because I couldn't just let her be upset. In other words, I wasn't giving her freedom to feel her feelings. And it took me a while to recognize that this is a type of control. And I did this, I think, out of a good motivation. I mean, I acted as a teacher, corrector, maybe a protector, and I thought this was maybe being like a spiritual leader. Instead of really helping her, it just made her feel controlled and dominated. A good friend of mine's been married for over 30 years, and we were sitting and having lunch a few weeks ago, and I asked him what makes his relationship work, and he said, low expectations. And we both kind of chuckled about that, and I think what he meant was that the 2 of them didn't attempt to control and manipulate each other. They gave each other freedom. Okay, second concept, responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself. So it says use your freedom to serve one another in love. In other words, freedom is balanced by responsibility. So Jesus set us free, and now it's up to us to determine how we're going to live. So God tells us to love your neighbor as yourself, and we're free to do whatever we want. We're told to use that freedom to love others. In other words, we get to choose. You're free to make choices on what you do. So how do you want to use your freedom? Do you want to love, or do you want to pursue your own desires? Now, relationships work well when both partners take responsibility for themselves. In other words, I can't be responsible, overly responsible for my spouse, but I can be responsible for me. And we're all responsible for 5 things, and I have this in another blog. I'll put a link on it. But our body, our words, our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior. So we are also responsible for protecting ourselves. And that means not letting ourselves be controlled or manipulated. It means being assertive about our own needs. And Michelle will admit that she was being under responsible when she didn't express to me that my actions made her feel unheard and dismissed. So I thought I was doing well when actually I was hurting our relationship. So we are responsible for how we use our freedom. We can use it to build up, and we can use it to tear down. Okay, third concept is to be aware of the consequences. So I love the passage because it talks about freedom, and then it talks about responsibility to love, and then it talks about consequences. And if you're always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. See, there's consequences to our actions. And if we tear each other down, we can destroy one another. Then you have to ask, is that acting in love? So I like to keep consequences in mind. How do our behaviors affect others? And I often think that my behaviors aren't really that bad. I mean, when I fixed Michelle by giving advice, I thought I was doing the right thing. I was trying to be helpful. But if our actions are causing someone to be destroyed, are we really acting in love? So, okay, what do you do? Tips for some marriage mentors. What do you do? One, talk about the consequences. So how is their behavior affecting the relationship? Are they destroying one another with their behaviors? And then what will happen if that behavior continues? Now, two, encourage freedom. Does either partner feel controlled, criticized, judged, and manipulated? If so, it's going to be difficult for love to continue to grow. Love is not an obligation. Love is a choice. So we talk, then three, about responsibility. So what are both people responsible for? How do they both contribute to a specific problem? And what can each of them do? And how can they use their freedom to show love? So I have found that when we kind of put it in that context, most people go, well, I don't want to hurt you. I just have kind of some of my own needs. And that's okay. Talk about those needs and what needs to happen with that. So those three tips again. Talk about consequences, encourage freedom, and talk about responsibility.